Okay, so for the next part of our Halloween series, we have Chucky. Now, Chucky's going to be a little bit more difficult because of just like the appendages and stuff, and I'll walk through that a little bit. And I'm trying a new spruing system here. I have this cone shape and I have this bottom part right here. Now, this bottom part here is technically supposed to be like a feeder, but I don't really want it there because you're supposed to attach the feeders to the largest parts. If you attach the feeder to the thinner parts, it'll keep the thinner parts molten too long, and then the more solid parts that you want to solidify last will actually probably solidify first if the thinner parts have too much molten metal next to it. So you don't want to fill this up very much. I'm probably just going to try to fill up the platform a little bit and then fill up just a little bit past it, just to make sure that the platform turns out good and to account for any shrinkage that might occur right there. But I have to be careful not to overfill that. And this is actually going to be my main pouring channel. So the metal's going to come in, and the top of this is actually going to act as like a trap. I'm going to gate in like down a little bit, so that way I have a little bit of space here for like any dirt or debris or anything to get captured. And so the way I imagine the directional solidification going is from the knife blade into the arms, and from the legs and the arms into the body, and the neck will go into the body and the head. And then those are the parts where you need to gate into, because you need to make sure that those fill out properly. The only thing I'm nervous about is the knife turning out properly, because it is a pretty thin section there. So we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of the wax and vent out any areas. So like as you can see here, anything that's pointing up towards the pouring channel is going to accumulate air, and you need to vent that out. So you can see like the hands there obviously are going to need to get vented out. You don't want to vent them into the pouring channel, you want to vent them out of some separate area. So I'm probably just going to vent them to the top of this cone section here. Just an update that I think I got these all ready to go for the plaster. So all I did was I gated in 2 spots on the main sprue here. So you can see they both go into the thickest parts. The one goes into the body, the other one goes into the head. And then I also vented a couple spots like the handle of the blade that he's holding to like his leg, and also just a little bit on the hand. Now the vents you don't really need to connect to anything to like actually get the air out. It's a good idea too, but since these are so far away, there's no real point in me doing that. I just want the air to be able to have somewhere to go, so that way it fills out properly. So typically what we would do is 3.5 pounds of water, and then 5 pounds of sand and 5 pounds of plaster. And we would usually do a double batch, so it'd be like 7 pounds and 10 and 10. But I think that when I start doing double batches, the second round gets a little bit too thick, and I want to increase it to about 4 pounds, I think. So I'm going to do 4 pounds and then 5 and 5. I thought it would make the mold overall a lot weaker, like the structural integrity would be weaker, but I guess it would actually allow it to breathe a little bit more by when the water leaves and evaporates. It allows it to breathe a lot more, and it's a little bit more porous. smooth and crisp that looks. Alright, we're going to basically dehydrate these all night, and then tomorrow do our normal burn cycle. Should eliminate any possible chance of moisture. So we're going to have the long burnout at a low temperature, and then we're going to have a decently long burnout around 1350, like probably a couple hours at least, just to make sure everything is completely gone. Then after we do the burnout cycle, then we're going to cool them down. Alrighty, it is a crisp 8:30 in the morning. You can see there's plenty of water on the bottom here. You can see a lot of steam coming out, hopefully on camera, of the lid here. There's like a small little gap, which, you know, would probably help if that was sealed better, but probably designed like that for a reason. Now, we ran this at a low temperature all night. Boom, plenty of steam. Let's see here. 220. 270, 360, 320. So the metal is definitely the coldest, pretty significantly different, by about 100 and so degrees. But so that's been hovering around the 200 mark all night, with the bottom knob to low and the top one to off. I just turned the top one to low, so now this should go up to like 350, 450, maybe even higher. I don't know, now that a lot of the moisture has absorbed some of that heat. We're gonna run that for about 3 hours, and then I'm gonna turn the bottom one to medium for about 3 hours, and then I'm gonna try doing the top one to medium for 4 hours. And the plan is, since this had a long time to cook overnight, it's kind of driven off a lot of that moisture, so it shouldn't need to heat as long, but I want to make sure that it's cooking at that higher temperature a lot longer. So I feel like this is a really good burnout schedule, because now we're getting the best of both worlds. We're cooking it for a long time at the low temperature, but we're also cooking it for a long time at the high temperature. Okay, so it's been about, what, 2.5 hours now? Got another half an hour, and then we're going to move the top knob to medium. And right now we have the top to low and the bottom to medium, and we're running about 750-ish, 800 on a bunch of the molds, which is actually pretty freaking hot already. And again, the side of the kiln is like 1,000. Some spots it's almost 1,100. Now these look pretty white, like pretty bone dry. They still could probably go for a little bit longer. They're hovering right around 1,300 degrees. Obviously the outside of the kiln is more like 1,350, 1,400, a little bit warmer, but they are pretty equalized in there, which is good to see. You can see it's kind of like separated all from the outside of the flask, which isn't a big deal unless it slides like out of the steel backer, which they started actually kind of doing that in my last melt, but luckily they didn't slide all the way out. As I was moving them over to my sand pit, they just, like, you know, slid around a little bit. So I think we're pretty much ready to go. I got all of my metal weighed out here, so we're gonna mix together some aluminum bronze with some zinc and some tin. I do have a little bit of tin, some tin here that I melted out from some soldering, which I separated as best as I could from any lead. And then I have a chunk of pewter right there for one of the second melts. Alright, well, we got our first set of molds cooling down and we're ready to pour. So we're going to go ahead and get the furnace going, melt down our metal, mix our new alloy of Nordic gold. The molds I got in there will start to cool down, hopefully 300, maybe even less degrees. We really got to reline this furnace. Now that was smooth. Just sliding right out. Nice. Wow, is that smooth. Holy cow. That is incredibly smooth.